Can I stay just for today? The day after my son's funeral. Late that night, my 6-year-old grandson showed up at our door, bruises covering his small body. "Where's your mom?" I asked, trying to stay calm despite my shock. He burst into tears. "Mom's with a man at home," he sobbed. My daughter-in-law didn't even attend her husband's funeral after his sudden death. Now she was with another man. And the bruises on my grandson. What could they mean? I feared she had done something terrible. I decided then that she would never recover from the consequences of her actions. I should have opposed my son's marriage 7 years ago. Maybe then, none of this would have happened. Life had been peaceful. My husband spent our retirement gardening and taking walks, enjoying our quiet days. Ryan, my only son, had married Leah. They lived in the next town with their 6-year-old son, Ethan. 7 years ago, Ryan brought Leah home to meet me. "Mom, I'm thinking of marrying her," he said. "Nice to meet you. I'm Leah." "It's a pleasure," she said with a smile. She was 5 years younger than Ryan, a bit loud but friendly and outgoing. Yet something about her overly bright smile made me uneasy. Ryan was shy and reserved, not the type to fall in love quickly. So when he introduced her as his fiancée, I was surprised and doubtful. "Is she really the right one for you?" I asked. After Leah left, I confronted my son, worried. "You two seem so different," I said. "Lee's been through a lot," Ryan explained. "She lost her parents young, but she's strong. I admire that about her." When he talked about her, he looked genuinely happy. So I decided to trust his choice. Shortly after they married, Lee became pregnant and gave birth to a healthy baby boy. My son was overjoyed, and I felt a sense of relief, thinking maybe their marriage was the right choice after all. I found my place as a grandmother. "Can I leave Ethan with you? I'd like to take Lee out for a while," Ryan asked. "Of course. Just make sure you show her some appreciation. She's always working so hard with the house and the baby," I reminded him. "I will," Ryan assured me. They would often leave Ethan with us while they went out together. Their relationship seemed solid, and I enjoyed every moment with my sweet grandson Ethan. But then something changed. Ethan was about 5 when it happened. Returning from a trip with friends, I decided to drop off some souvenirs at Ryan's house. I didn't call ahead, thinking I'd just leave the gifts and go. "Ethan, stop messing around. If you don't listen, get out." "I'm sorry, Mom, please forgive me." As I reached the front door, I heard Lee's angry voice and Ethan's desperate cries. Concerned, I rang the doorbell. "Lee, it's me." After a moment, the door creaked open and Lee appeared out, looking cautious. "Mother-in-law, why are you here?" "Ryan's still at work." Lee's expression darkened when she saw me, her tone barely above a whisper, as if dealing with me was an annoyance. "I came to drop off some souvenirs, but I heard shouting and wondered what was going on," I explained. "Ethan was about to jump off the stairs, so I scolded him, that's all." "Is he okay?" "He's fine. Could you not interfere?" With a sharp tone, Lee snapped, and then the door slammed shut. I was taken aback by my daughter-in-law's sudden change in attitude. I quickly realized it might have been a mistake to drop by unannounced. Lee was still new to motherhood, and having been through that stage myself, I understood the stress it could bring. I started to worry about both Lee and my grandson, so I decided to bring it up with my son. "Was Lee upset?" I asked. That night, I called Ryan. "What do you mean?" "Everything seemed fine," he said. "Good to know," I replied, though I still wasn't sure how Lee was really feeling. After that, I always made sure to call before visiting. But I noticed Leah was rarely home when I did come by. I wondered if she had taken up a new hobby or if she might be avoiding me. I tried to casually ask Ryan about it. No, she's just not around much on her days off, so I take care of Ethan more, he said. He didn't seem concerned about her absence and actually enjoyed the time with Ethan, so I decided not to press the issue. A year went by and Ethan turned 6. I couldn't celebrate his birthday on the actual day due to a prior commitment, so we planned to celebrate later. Wanting to get him something special, I called Ryan. What would be a good birthday present for Ethan this year? I asked. I have an overnight job today, but I'll ask him when I get back and let you know, Ryan replied. Lately, Ryan had been traveling a lot for work, often gone for several days at a time. He has a wife and child who need him. I hope he doesn't push himself too hard, I thought. I planned to mention this to him the next time we spoke, but I had no idea that our last conversation had already taken place. The next day, Lee called with devastating news. Ryan had been in a hit-and-run accident and didn't survive. I can't believe it. We just spoke yesterday, and he seemed fine, I managed to say. In shock, I hung up the phone, unable to process the words. I needed to know about the funeral arrangements, so I called Leah back. Leah, I'm sorry about earlier. I was just so shocked, I said. It's fine. So what are your plans for Ryan's funeral? She asked, her tone detached. That's up to you. Do whatever you want, she replied. Before I could say more, she ended the call. I was taken aback by Lee's response, but I figured she must be in deep shock herself, so I took charge of the funeral preparations. For days, I was overwhelmed with tasks and only contacted Leah to inform her of the arrangements. I didn't have the time or energy to offer her much support. Finally, the day of my son's funeral arrived. Lee, what's going on? I was shocked when Lee didn't show up. The time came and went, but she and my grandson were nowhere to be seen. I called her repeatedly, but she didn't answer. The funeral went on without them. Even after the service, I tried to reach Leah, but she never responded. I thought about going to her home, but with so many visitors, I couldn't find the right moment. Then late the night after the funeral, I heard a small voice. Grandma, Grandpa. As I woke up to use the restroom, I heard a small voice coming from the front door. Who could it be at this hour? I opened the door carefully and was shocked to see my 6-year-old grandson, Ethan, standing there. He was covered in bruises. Can I stay over just for tonight? Ethan asked, his voice trembling as he fought back tears. Where's your mom? I asked. She's with a man at home. He told me not to come back until tomorrow night, Ethan replied. I was horrified to learn that Ethan had walked all the way from the neighboring town to reach us. I hugged him tightly as he began to cry. Losing my son had been painful enough, but knowing that my daughter-in-law was with another man while neglecting Ethan filled me with both sadness and anger. Then I noticed Ethan's injuries. As I examined him more closely, I saw scars all over his body, some fresh, others old. What happened to these wounds? I asked. I can't tell you, Ethan said, refusing to speak further. No matter how gently I asked, he wouldn't say if he was protecting someone or too afraid to talk. I started to wonder if my daughter-in-law had been mistreating him all along. I brought Ethan inside and gave him some hot milk. Grandma, are you sleepy? He asked. No, it's something else, I replied. If Dad's in heaven, do we get lots of money? Ethan suddenly asked. What? Who told you that? I was stunned. A 6-year-old shouldn't be thinking about things like that. Some adult, must have put the idea in his head. Mom was talking to a man, Ethan added. That's when suspicions started to creep in. The police were still investigating the hit and run that killed my son, and they hadn't found the driver yet. But hearing what Ethan said, and knowing how Leah had been acting, I couldn't shake the feeling that she might be involved. I couldn't just sit there. I woke my husband, who was asleep upstairs, and told him everything. I asked him to put Ethan to bed, while I decided to check out Lee's house, where she was likely spending time with another man. When I got there, I noticed a car I didn't recognize parked outside. Lee doesn't have a driver's license, so it had to belong to her lover. Could this be connected? I wondered. I wrote down the license plate number and checked the car for any signs of damage. I found a dent on the front, as if it had hit something. As I tried to take a picture, despite the late hour, someone approached and started talking to me. From that conversation, I became convinced that the car's owner was involved in Ryan's hit and run. The next morning, I took Ethan to the hospital, and my husband went to a place that would soon become crucial. In the evening, after leaving Ethan with relatives, my husband and I returned to my son's house. The same car was still there. Her lover must still be inside. I pressed the intercom, nerves on edge, ready to confront Leah. But she didn't answer right away. "Leah, I know you're in there. We need to discuss Ryan's insurance. Could you come out?" Of course, that wasn't my real reason, but I figured mentioning money would get her attention. Sure enough, after a moment, Leah appeared. "What do you mean by insurance money?" she asked. "Since we're here, could you let us in?" Hold on. Can we talk here?" she insisted, standing firm at the door, blocking our way inside. "Is there a reason we can't come in?" I pressed. She went silent. With my husband's help, we pushed our way inside and started searching the rooms for her lover. "What do you think you're doing?" "I'll call the police," Lee shouted, trying to stop us. I ignored her and opened the bedroom door, finding a man lying on the bed, the one we were looking for. "Who is this?" I demanded. "It doesn't matter who he is," Lee snapped back. "Did you miss Ryan's funeral because of this man?" "That's not true. He's just a friend traveling across the country. He just got here, and I let him rest. He's tired, so please don't disturb him." Her excuse was absurd, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. But Lee acted like we were the ones out of line. Don't lie, Ethan came to our house in the middle of the night, crying because his mom was with a man and wouldn't let him in. He begged us to let him stay. "You can't trust what a child says," she shot back. "He's your lover, isn't he? You've been neglecting Ethan and leaving the house often to meet this man, haven't you? If taking a break means being accused of cheating, then I can't even relax," she said, seeking support from her lover. They both started smirking, laughing at us as if it were all a joke. "Enjoy this while you can," I whispered to my husband, subtly starting to record the conversation. "The one who hit Ryan and fled was your lover, wasn't it?" Lee laughed, her body trembling slightly as she tried to maintain control. "Ha, what are you talking about?" "Accusing us without evidence. You're losing it." They continued to mock me, sneering throughout the exchange. I wouldn't bring this up if I didn't have proof. There's a significant dent in the front of the car parked outside. "You're calling me a criminal over that. It was just a minor bump, and it wasn't even on the day of Ryan's accident. It happened way before." The man remained unfazed, and Lee stood there, watching without a word. "But there are witnesses. They saw you both trying to get an estimate from a repairman on the day Ryan died. I met a young man who lives nearby when I came here late at night. He's a car enthusiast, and he recognized the car parked outside because he's been eyeing one just like it. He saw your lover talking to a repairman that day, and he also heard Leah pushing for the repairs to be done quickly. I don't recall any of that. It's absurd to trust what some random neighbor says." While the request was to fix a dent on the bumper, I continued. But the shop refused the job, so the car is still here, right? The neighbor even remembered the shop's name, so I sent my husband there to ask about it. They said your lover claimed the dent was caused by a cat, but the shop found that suspicious and refused the request. How do you explain that? Lee stammered, I just got a call from the police about a hit-and-run report. But I knew she was bluffing. No such call had been made. I decided to push them further. The car was a minivan, and the license plate number matches the one parked outside, doesn't it? That must be some mistake. He tried to deflect, but his earlier confidence had crumbled. They were clearly feeling the pressure. Just a little more, and I could get them to confess. I decided to switch tactics. I can't stand to see Ethan suffer anymore. Losing his father was hard enough, and now if his mother gets caught. I sniffled, covering my face as I pretended to cry. But the weight of the situation overwhelmed me, and the tears became real. Seeing this, Lee's demeanor changed. She seemed conflicted, her expression darkening. Actually, I asked him to go pick up Ryan. She suddenly confessed. Hey, what are you saying? The man interrupted. It's okay, Lee said, patting his shoulder, trying to calm him. The man seemed to sense something and backed down quickly. So suddenly, my husband jumped out in front of the car, and there was no way to avoid him, right, Jared? Yeah, that's what happened, her lover reluctantly agreed, looking uncomfortable. But Lee continued without acknowledging his unease. We panicked and ran. The guilt was too much, and we couldn't even face the funeral. Whether this was true or not, I couldn't tell, but Lee showed no sign of remorse. Maybe she thought tears would save her, but I wasn't buying it. Even if that story were true, wouldn't Ryan have been saved if you'd called an ambulance right away? That's why we panicked, she said. Ethan asked if he'd get a lot of money if his daddy went to heaven. Did you get rid of Ryan for insurance money because he was in your way? Lee fell silent as I pressed her with the question. But I had something more urgent to confront her about. Leah, were you not only mistreating Ryan, but also your own child? Ethan was covered in bruises. I don't know anything about that. He falls a lot, you know. Then explain this, I said, thrusting a piece of paper in front of her. That morning, I had taken Ethan to the hospital and gotten a diagnosis. The doctor noted that the bruises were likely caused by strong blows. He also mentioned that the injuries might have been inflicted by an adult male. When I said this, her lover turned away, his face betraying his guilt. It was clear to me now he was the one who had hurt my grandson. Earlier, when Lee claimed that Ethan's injuries were his own doing, I knew she was covering for her lover. I glared at her. Lee, can't you even protect your own child? How could you be so careless? But every time he comes around, Ethan starts crying out of nowhere. It's so irritating, she snapped, finally revealing her true colors. That confirmed what I suspected. Her lover had hurt Ethan, and Leah turned a blind eye. Ethan, you've been strong. Let me handle this now. My grandson had endured seeing his mother with another man while grieving the loss of his father. And Ryan, my son, gone too soon, leaving behind his young child. The thought filled me with a burning anger. You two are going to regret this, I warned. What can an old woman like you do? Lee sneered. The room fell silent, with only the clock ticking in the background. Lee and her lover kept laughing, still feeling secure in their lies. But when I took a deep breath and launched into my final move, the atmosphere shifted. By the way, your name is spreading all over social media. What? Why? Lee's confidence faltered as she grabbed her phone, her fingers shaking as she searched for information. A friend of my son's got suspicious when you skipped the funeral. He reached out to me. I shared what I knew. Later, he got back to me, His wife started digging, and your lover's shady past and debts started coming to light. Others got involved, and now the information is spreading. You had no right to dig into our lives like that. Lee shouted, her anger flaring as she stared at her phone, her eyes suddenly widening in shock. Wait, why are my photos? Later, I got a call from my son's friend, telling me that Lee's photos were spreading online too. He hadn't meant for it to go this far, but someone had posted the pictures. Among the latest ones, there was even a shot of her looking tense near the accident scene. Things were spiraling out of control. It's your fault for running your mouth. What are you going to do to fix this? The internet's powerful, isn't it? But you're the one who did something bad enough to get people talking, aren't you? As I pressed her, sweat poured down her face. I'm going to tell the police everything I know. Once they hear it, the investigation will point straight at you for Ryan's case, and the truth will come out. Please don't do that. She suddenly broke down, her mascara smearing as she cried. Her lover kept apologizing too. I won't forgive you, no matter what you do now. Then they exchanged glances, and Lee nodded. Then we'll shut you up right here and now. To my shock, both of them lunged at my husband and me. But just then, the doorbell rang, and we heard someone shout, "Police!" Huh? Why? It turned out someone had reported seeing a car believed to be involved in Ryan's hit and run just before it entered the house. Help us, please, I shouted. Taking advantage of their confusion, my husband and I rushed to the door and were protected by the officers. Afterward, I explained everything to the investigators, and my husband played the recordings he'd made. The police quickly detained both of them. This is all a mistake. I didn't do anything wrong. Lee cried. Despite their protests, Lee and her lover were taken away. The evidence later led to the arrest of my son's wife's lover for the hit and run and the abuse of my grandson. While the exact sentence is pending trial, we're hoping for the harshest penalty considering the harm done to our son. Though Lee didn't directly participate, she may face charges for her involvement in the planning. And for ignoring the abuse of our grandson, she's lost custody rights. Facing public backlash on social media, she has no one left to support her. Eden is now under our care. Living with us, he's slowly regaining his happiness. We're committed to putting his well-being first and giving him